Greetings. This is Tom Sawyer, and I'm here to just share with you the law of reflection. We're going through John Maxwell's The 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth. And I will say on this actual law, I'm actually covering a couple of things that just take it down. This was actually given as a lesson, kind of a big picture, but I think from a practical application, looking at it also in kind of the daily lives, events, what you do daily. And the reason why I'm recording it this way, you'll notice that this little circle here is we had some technical difficulties last night in filming this. So I thought I would just go ahead and do this. This was the easiest format, and you'll see me in the circle. So then you'll know that I'm always around, right? So anyway, so we'll get started with this. Just a couple of housekeeping things. This is the 2026, just in case it's archived, but June 22nd is going to be our next meeting. I don't think we talked about that. So it'll be June the 22nd. That'll be a Monday night. We're going to do something. We're going to open the doors at 6 o'clock. We're going to start discussions right at 6:15. Questions, answers. So anything you want to ask about leadership. And also it kind of helps me because I can make sure that as I go through the lessons for that day, that you'll have more information and get more out of it. Just as an example, we had three questions, excuse me, in our discussions. One is how to deal with confrontation using biblical principles. In the workplace or family or anything, we always come with confrontation. Some people are very confrontational. Others don't want to have confrontation. So how do we do this in a biblical manner, but really in leadership? We always talk about taking the high road, and so we'll delve into a couple of those. When do we pause? One of the things about this lesson is it's learning to pause allows growth to catch up with you. See, it's only when we pause that we actually see growth. We gain wisdom. We understand where we're at. We can make decisions to make a difference. And then the other question is, when you do pause, how long do you pause? And when do you, again, catch up? And when do you get back in the groove? So we're going to answer some of those questions as we go through today. If you're listening to this and you attended last night, you'll notice that some of the stories are not in here. Basically, this is trying to make just a quick update in case you missed it. It kind of gives you, in general, the information that you need. And also the slides that you see here, you can gain them electronically. You'll see in the description of this video, you'll see my personal email, but also the church's email. And if you just send an email and say lesson 4 or growth leadership, we'll look at that and respond. If you have personal questions, same way, just send them in and we'll see what we can do as far as getting back to you on them. If not, we'll try to answer them at the next leadership training we have. So with that being said, we'll go ahead and get started. And I always like to start off with some references. Why do we do this? And there's a lot of, you'll come to see that when we talk about reflection, there is a whole lot about it. In fact, a whole book was written, Ecclesiastes, one of the smartest men in the world, would reflect, and he's reflecting on what he sees, and he puts it there. But in Proverbs 4:26, it says, be careful. Give careful thought to the paths for your feet and be steadfast in all your ways. One of the things that we're supposed to do is give careful thought. That's something that we don't do a whole lot. How do we give careful thought? And when we talk about pause or reflecting, that's what it is. And notice this too. Give careful thought to the paths. It's not just one path. A lot of times we look at, which path we're going. But when we look at reflecting, sometimes you may have to reflect as a mother or a father or a husband, a spouse, right? You may have to reflect as an employee or an employer, a manager, or somebody who's just working. When we look at a team, you may be a team lead, part of the team. So positions and everything, but many of us have different paths. I'm on two organizations that I lead, and then also I do consulting. And so there's three aspects, and then I'm a husband, and a father. And so these are many different paths. And what happens a lot of times is we may even focus in a path, and maybe we need to focus on other things. And that brings, well, one of the questions was, when do you pause? Sometimes it's when you have time to pause. And we'll get into that a little bit more, but we have all these paths, and sometimes you can't just fully analyze every one. And we'll get into that of how do you know which ones to analyze, which ones not to. Psalms 139, 23 through 24 says, "Search me, O God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there is any offensive way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting." Here, the psalmist David is saying, hey, I want you to search me. I want to know and test my heart, my anxious thoughts. Nobody has anxious thoughts, right? But he's saying, hey, you need to know these. And if there's anything that I've done wrong, lead me in the way I should go. And what the psalmist is really doing here is he's reflecting, and he's looking at his life. And that's what we need to do. When we look at our life, we want to go in the right direction. Nobody wants to go in the wrong direction. I hate backtracking. If I'm driving, I don't want to turn around. I'd like to go the direction first. However, if I'm going down the wrong road, I don't want to get miles and miles and miles down that road if it's the wrong way. And so part of it is there's a freedom too, when you reflect, that you can actually make decisions and know which one's right, which one's wrong, and make corrections. And so that we'll be looking at that today as well. So for self-imposed timeout, right? Again, what are we talking about? The power of pausing. And I didn't tie it in last night to emotional intelligence, but being able to pause is one of the most powerful tools that you can have. By pausing, and so that means you're going down a path. Life's busy, but you take a place and a time, and you reflect on what's going on. And when you reflect on what's going on, any event or experience or life in general, what happens is that you actually learn from it. You get insight from it. Intentional pausing expands thinking. You're not just going through life, but you're thinking through life. There's a saying that I like. It's by a philosopher. He says, sometimes I sit and think, and sometimes I sit. And what we want to do is actually sit and think, right? Don't let life just pass you by, but actually take time and go, what can I learn from this? What insight? How do I reflect? If you are a leader, pausing is vital to success. So let's get started. Typically, there's John Maxwell has 1, 2, 3, 4 eyes. That's the pastor in him, right? Because everything starts with an eye. But it's really good. These are the things what do you do when you pause? Well, you want to investigate. And I will say this, making observations is the biggest tool that you'll use. You'll use it in study, use it in business, use it in life. But I found observation is probably the biggest tool that you can have, or the best tool. And so when you investigate, that means you ask the who, what, when, where, why, right? And so that makes the difference. Then there's an incubation period. Sometimes you start thinking about something, you start looking at it. You may not know all the whys, but if you've taken time to reflect and you take multiple times to reflect, or a length of time to reflect, what you'll find is that there's thoughts that are deeper than on the surface. And you start looking, because now when you go to that event or those people, you start seeing more things. And so a lot of times when you pause, Even if you hit the resume button, you're thinking about what's going on and how can I make things better. The other thing is it illuminates. What it does is a lot of times we'll have an event or we'll go through a day and we'll actually learn some valuable things. Maybe it's about us, maybe it's about other people, but it highlights it. It goes, oh, this was valuable or this was not valuable. This was a waste of time. This was not a waste of time. Illustrations. It expands your experience into lessons. It's one thing to make the observation, but the other one is how do you put meat on the bones, if you will? If you look at it as an observation, as just a skeleton, how do you put bones on that? How do I make this practical? Maybe you see somebody doing something that they really enjoyed and you never thought, oh, maybe I should get that person into this area, or maybe I can utilize that person. Maybe things went wrong and you go, how do I connect? And remember, sometimes we win and sometimes we learn. So, but those are kind of the four concepts of reflecting. Now, I talked about observations. If you want the right answer, you have to ask the right question. I'm going to pull from just a series that I did. If you're interested, I've thought about offering this one time as like a Saturday morning or another evening that's in addition to this, unless there's a need for us to concentrate on it. But great leaders ask good questions. And so I pulled a little bit from that discussion. And so you can see that great leaders ask good intentional questions, meaning they're intended to get a result. And if you ask the right question, you'll get the right answer. And sometimes people, when they think, they don't necessarily think about their situation. I told you this observation, when you observe, you can make some of the biggest decisions, learn the biggest lessons, or start to understand why. Jesus was the master of asking questions. Jesus asked over 300 questions that were recorded. He was asked personally 180. And so when you read the scripture, normal dialogue, especially when you want to expand your thinking, Jesus wants people to think. And so I've just listed a couple of passages here. But before we get into that, the reason why is that questions can help and can be used to transform lives. And you'll see Jesus do this, and we can do this in the workplace. I've asked this, and is that I'll ask a question many times versus criticize. Why? Because they may not know, which goes into number 2, to clarify. Just because you know it and you assume they know it doesn't mean they do. Just because you communicated it doesn't mean you connected with them and they understood it. So to clarify, to understand, to rebuke, to establish a measurement. Many times people don't know how to measure. I'm doing this, but how do I measure it? To connect, to inform, instruct, to refute, to add value, meaning to get people to critically think about what's going on. Many times people will just go through life, they'll sit, they won't sit and think. And so many times the question gets them to think. It gets me to think. And when I start asking myself questions, when I ask scripture questions, when I ask people questions, is when I start to change. And that's what happens too, even though you may be looking at it for your work or for Bible study, whatever you may ask, the event you have, when you start asking questions, you'll find out more about yourself and how you think and maybe how you should be thinking. Just one other thing. The requirement for great questions is to ask the right question. We need to ask the right person. We need to ask at the right time, and we need to ask the right way. And so let's be very helpful. Here's one, and this is Jesus, and this is, I want to say Luke 8. We brought this up yesterday, and I didn't look at it, but it's one of the Gospels. I think it's Luke 8:27. And Jesus went on with his disciples to the villages of Caesarea Philippi. And on the way, he asked his disciples, "Who do people say that I am?" And they told him, John the Baptist, others say Elijah, and others said one of the prophets. And he asked them, "But who do you say that I am?" Peter answered him, "You are the Christ." And he strictly charged them to tell no one about him. So when we get in this passage of scripture, it's interesting because Jesus is talking to the disciples and he asks a group of, what is everybody saying about me? He wanted to know. And he asked that question. And they're getting him to critically think about other people and what they're thinking, which is important sometimes. So he asked that question and then he makes it personal. But what do you think? And a lot of times it's not until we get personal that we really understand and we go, oh, I really believe this. And so you can see him, he's talking about other people, and then he gets very personal. He gives a frame of reference for what's going on. There's a lot more that we can dive into this, but just because this is a short session. The other one is taken from John 21. When they had finished eating, Jesus said to him, "Simon Peter, son of John, do you love me more than these?" Now, this is interesting because this is also a question of feeling, right? And also a question of comparison. And we went through this. Jesus asked this question 3 times. And each time he says, "I know I love you." When you look at this, and we brought this up, if you look at it from the Greek, you have the first 2 times Jesus says, "Hey, do you have an agape love, this sacrificing, you'll lay down your life?" Peter's response is, I have a friendly feeling towards you. And the last time, Jesus says, "Hey, do you have a friendly feeling towards me?" And it says that Jesus was hurt because he asked him, "Do you just have a friendly feeling towards me?" Remember, Jesus denied him. Peter denied him 3 times. How many times did he ask him? Anyway, we get we get Peter answering questions, thinking about his own life, his own relationship. It's interesting, even though Peter, and I didn't bring this up last night, but even though Peter had a lower self-esteem about himself, Jesus didn't. In fact, Jesus made sure that he knew that, hey, you're going to die for me, so don't worry, you have this sacrificial love. So it's a really good story. Mark 4, 40 through 41. This is they're in a boat. The boat has been tossed. They think they're going to die. They're terrified. And he wakes up. They wake him up, and he stills the water and the wind. Everything's calmed down. So they're in this huge storm. And I said, crickets. Probably no crickets out there, but quiet. And he said to them, "Why are you so afraid? Have you still no faith?" And they were filled with great fear and said to one another, "Who is this that even the wind and the sea obey him?" You see, from this passage of scripture, they were afraid. They were really afraid that they were going to die. But when he calmed the wind and the sea, they were really afraid. And Jesus says, "Why are you so afraid? What's wrong with you? Have you no faith?" The other thing that Jesus did is he pointed out where they had deficiencies. Did he say, "You have no faith"? He asked a question. When we talk about confrontational, one of the first questions that we asked, one of the things that I like is we need to learn to ask better questions. Why are you so afraid? What's wrong? Have you still no faith? And so not only did he ask a question that led him to the issue, but he also gave insight to where they were lacking because of their faith. Now, they were really scared. We brought this out last night. They were more scared now than when they were about to die. And it's like, how does that work? And when you look at this passage, it's because all of a sudden they realize God is in their boat. Remember, God was distant from them. You went to the temple, you had the priest, you had all this, but now they had God in the boat, if you will. And they had great fear, great fear. For us, and we look at the last song, God is with us if you're a person of faith. And so he's right there, and he can help us out. Big picture question and reflection. I told you that Maxwell in his training, he takes this from almost like a yearly. You can apply some of this to the daily, and we'll just go through it real quick, and then I'm going to take you into just a little bit more practical. Big picture, personal awareness and question. What is my biggest asset? When you're looking at even an event, maybe you have really good skills in a certain area. Maybe you did the event and you didn't use any of those, right? So what's my biggest asset? What is my biggest liability? What is my highest high? What's emotionally, man, I really like this. What is my lowest low? And when you do assess an event, assess a year, assess a month, these are great questions. And again, I'm not saying that you can't use them on a daily event, but try to look at it, because there are some good things when we talk about what's your greatest asset. I try to stay in my greatest asset. I don't try to get into the other areas, which sometimes get me in trouble. If you're working for a large company, usually you can hire people to take care of certain things. When you're working with churches or some other things, you may not have that kind of cash flow. But it is interesting, because a lot of times people do an event or go through daily life, and they'll spend a lot of time on their biggest liability. And I always say, concentrate on your strength, work on your weaknesses. If you can find tools or a better way of doing it for your liability, that is the way to do it. So I would encourage that. But again, what makes you happy about this year, about this month, about the event, about this day? You could do it, like I said. I look at these more big picture, but they're still applicable. And what's your lowest part? What was my most worthwhile emotion? What was my least worthwhile emotion? What is my best habit? What do I do that really made this good? What do I don't do? Or what habit do I have that just is bad? I know somebody who will do a lot of work, and they'll do 80% of the work, which is the hardest part, getting some to 80%, and then they may not complete it. So it's interesting, and just even at that point, they're returning it. Sometimes it's 100%, but maybe it's procrastination. Maybe you just put it off. You don't even do the 80%. You wait till the last minute and then push it out. Some people are very good at planning. Some people are very good at navigating through situations. Some people have a habit of listening, and some people don't. So you can take that. That's just a few thoughts on that. What is most fulfilling to me? What makes you feel good? One of the things is that God's designed us. And so even in an event and a day, what's most fulfilling for that day? What is my most prized possession? This could be a thing. It could be relationships. It could be the joy. It could be a lot of things. But what do you prize most about the event, the year, your day? What do I not know about me yet? There might be some things that you think about. One of the things that each one of us has blind spots. But if you go through the days, or when you take on events, and sometimes God will take us through some challenges that are beyond us, so that we can find out more things about ourselves. Think about the boat with the disciples. They found out more about themselves. They were like, wow, we're actually here, we're living. And so next time they're in a storm, they at least go, hey, we're going to wake them up first, right? Or something. But what could they learn from that? I want to take some time too and just look at, when do you hit pause, like on events or activities or Projects. I could have put projects there as far as events. And do you look at them daily, weekly, monthly? Uh, and this is questions and reflections. So personal awareness, one of the things that I typically start with is what went right? What was a win? And this could be a variety of things, meaning sometimes you may have an event and things did not go well. So so they went wrong. And the second one, what went wrong? And what did we learn? But there's also even events, what went right and what was a win. I gave an illustration. We had right next door to the church, we have uh, um, agriculture workers that come in seasonally. And so they live right there. And we wanted to offer a, I think it was a dodgeball. It could have been a 3-on-3 football, a soccer. Um, but anyway, we offered this, and we had some gentlemen that would cook hot dogs and everything. So we had this hot dog cart right there for people to feed everybody. We had drinks, we had everything, and it started at 4 o'clock. So at 4 o'clock, there was nobody there, and we had went the day before, and all these people said they were going to come, and so it was supposed to last from 4 to 6. 6 o'clock came, still nobody came. I mean, it was zero, and so I would say, man, what went wrong? And I was thinking about the whole process, the timing. How could we get more people? What things that we need to do? What questions we need to ask? But I really felt like God wanted me to have this, and I just said, God, why did we go through all this and nobody show up? And I invited another church to help out, so they were helping out, and that was where the hot dog stand and everything came from. And I thought, boy, I guess we'll close up. But God, I felt like you really wanted me to have this, and I didn't know why. So I went out there, and we are just talking, having a hot dog, and two gentlemen, agricultural workers, come up and say, hey, can we get a hot dog? And then more came. And so the event was over, and we went inside. It was a little warm, so we went inside and we ate. And then we started asking, hey, what would y'all guys really want? Because obviously what we did that night did not work. And they said, what we really want is we want to learn English. And so we started English as a second language, but we made it really practical. And it was probably the best time we've had ministering. And it was just developing friendships. We had a carne asada cookout at my house. We went to a restaurant here. It just developed relationships that were meaningful. And so sometimes if I look at it that night, I thought, well, the way we did the event needs some work. I'm not going to do that again, right? Just because it had a great outcome doesn't mean that's, that we did it right. But we had some great wins that impacted lives through that system. So anytime you have an event, you have a day, you may have a lot of failures, but even within the failures, there may be some wins. And those wins could be significant. And so don't get discouraged. And a lot of times you don't think about the wins until you hit pause. So hit pause, think about it, see what you can do. What went wrong? What do I need to learn? The next time we plan something, we had them plan it with us. What day are y'all going? And they would say, hey, we're all going to Mexico this day, so don't do it on that day or that weekend. So, and we had better participation, and it worked out good. Did I achieve what was needed and wanted or expected? And again, when you ask questions, you go, if it's on a daily basis, did I finish what I needed to do? What areas do I need to work on? And again, this is pretty important because, again, just because there's work to be done, see if it's in your strength or weaknesses. Sometimes I have to use my weaknesses, maybe because I'm the best fit, and so I have to do it. But I typically try to stay in my strengths. And so, but what areas do I need to work on? If it's a weakness, right, in me, and I go, what did I learn? One of my things is not that I have to do that. It's like I have to plan or organize or structure differently. I have to get ahead of this because I know it's a weakness that I have. So, so what areas do I need to work on? And and we'll talk about that in a little bit. Actions, questions. Did I miss my objective and why? Are my objectives achievable? Were they even reachable? Right? That's another lesson probably on how to create great objectives and how to put in measurements. Did I miss others' expectations? People will always have expectations. If you do any amount of counseling, a lot of times it's not the facts, it's the expectations that don't get met. Many times I'll have a training, this is in the corporate world, where I met the need and what needed to be done, but it didn't meet some of the expectations. And so some expectations are unrealistic, some are real. I always try to look at expectations, kind of like even with asking the questions beforehand, the leadership. And then what resources do I need? What steps do I need to take? And how can I measure it? Where do I need help? Do I need to delegate? Do I need to train? And those are some of the questions. And again, this kind of big picture personal awareness questions, just kind of tuned in a little bit more. This is what was most fulfilling to me. In a given day, what did you learn? What did you not learn in an event? Many times, people will realize their value or what they like to do when you put on a big event. Because they may be bummed because they were tied up doing some other things, or they were connecting with people. Some people that were connected to people would be like, maybe I wish I was just doing behind the scenes. But you'll find out and lessons learned. How did the event go in general? And when you get people, and this is why we call them hot washes, we'd get everybody together after an event and go, what did we like? What did we not like? What about you personally? And and when that happens, and again, usually at work, doing consulting, do that a lot, or at the corporate world. And we do need to do it more in the church and other areas of ministry, or just no matter what you're doing. And then here's the big question is, what did I learn about me? We talked about hitting pause, and even as I did this, we hit at the very beginning, which I did not do at this time. But I'm going to hit it real hard here, is find a place to reflect. If you're going to hit that pause button, you need to find a place to reflect. Where is it? I gave an illustration. I'll follow up on it now, because Carolyn was talking, said that was pretty good for years ago. What do you do now? And it's a really good question. And as she said it, it was more for how do y'all know what to do now, or what's my example? I gave an example. I used to reflect. I knew it was important, even young in my early 20s, and that time I could run. I'd run 2 miles a night, and and it wasn't a hard run. It'd be a hard run now. They were about 8-minute miles, but just a comfortable jog. And I would think, my mind would just think about the day, would think about events, it would think. And I use that time to unwind and think and consider about the day, about the next day. And so that was my time, if you will. Now, fast forward, what do I do now? Well, in the corporate world, I used to set aside Friday. And so Friday about 2:00, I would just stop everything and I would just reflect of what's going on. And what do I need to do? I'd hit that pause button personally. But I did have a place where I reflected at. I traveled a lot. It may be going back to the hotel and just sitting in the desk and going, okay, what's going on? What do I need? Here, I have the church, but also at home. There's many times, typically I won't reflect or pause in the middle of the night. I do occasionally. I do a lot of studying. I'll wake up and instead of going back to bed, I'll study, just because my life is busy and I like sleeping on things as far as what I study. So, but in the morning I'll wake up. But typically, the way my week goes, it's either Wednesday or Thursday, and I'll take that time, and many times I'll come to this room that I'm in now. It's our training room. Nobody's here, and I'll just sit down and think. It's different. It's a place. I don't have any distractions, and so I come here and I reflect. Sometimes I'll do it in my office, and and I'll use a whiteboard. Sometimes I'll just put up different areas, and I'll reflect on what needs to get done. One of the questions was, what do you reflect on, and how often do you reflect? It really depends on the urgency. One of the things I always say, if there's a safety concern, you reflect right away, right? It's just like, okay, this is dangerous, or this is not right. We need to fix it. And so anything of utmost safety, or a person's, if there's a critical event that needs to happen, I usually take time right then and decide. There are some things we have a certain bandwidth. There are some things that I will let go sometimes because they're on the right track. They haven't hopped off the track. I know I got to circle back to them. Should I do it now? The answer is probably yes, but I know that I can wait just a little bit longer and we're still moving in the right direction. But you do have to schedule that time, and you do have to say, okay, we need to meet. I've done that a couple of times. Sometimes I've waited a little too long. But again, it really depends on when. For me, I reflect usually in the morning anyway, every morning. One of the things is that I use the Lord's Prayer quite a bit. It's also one of the handouts. You can, if you send this and say leadership meeting and handouts, I'll send you the handouts, the addresses, email address, my address, and the church's address is actually in the description. So you should be able to just email and get it from there. But in the morning, if you look at the Lord's Prayer, and you'll see on this handout, is Jesus gave a format which we should use, and that he uses as an example. He's like, hey, how do we pray? He starts off, my Father in heaven. Well, the first thing you need to do is reflect on your relationship with God. And again, I'm going to go through this very quick. If you want more, come next time or shoot me an email. Hallowed be your name. What you're doing there is you're reflecting on who God is and what he has done. And this is a good time, too, to give him honor, gratitude, and thankfulness because of who he is and what he's done in your life. Your kingdom come. A lot of times, at work, there's times where I just go, God, I need your peace, your kingdom to reign at work. Hey, we have an event going on, like today, and so it's praying specifically for that event because we're having people from the community come. And so it's a matter of praying that they would feel your love, they'd feel your kingdom. And then it's like, what do you want me to do? Because I want you to be in control of these certain areas or show up at these certain areas where your kingdom to be there. What do you want me to do personally? And then the other thing is the needs. What are your needs? What do I actually need to make this place? A lot of times we get anxiety, and two of the things that will help, again, that's kind of a deep subject in itself, but two things that will help is one is the relationship, understanding who he is and what he's done and can do, being willing, but also going, what do I need? What do I personally need? And not what I want, but what do I need? And make a list of that. And then, again, the next one that's interesting, it's a sixth thing, not the first thing, is asking him, Jesus to forgive us, God to forgive us. And it's reflecting on relationships. So every day, if you use kind of this format, you're reflecting on what you need to do today. It's like, hey, how can I do it? You're asking for your needs, and then you're reflecting about relationships. And so then it talks about us, lead us not to temptation. It's reflecting on things, our weaknesses, our strengths, and where we need help. And so I really like the Lord's Prayer format as just a, a really good daily way to reflect. Now, I do want you, I passed out some 3x5 cards, but I do want you, before you leave or you stop this video or whatever you do, we're about at the end anyway, but find a place to reflect. Where is that for you? Some people may have to go to a park, they may have to go someplace away from their house. If you have kids, that maybe you need to go late at night or early in the morning. I was talking to somebody last night, and they said, if I don't do it in the morning, it's over with, right? And I'm the same way many times. It's like, if I don't do it in the morning part, if I wait till the afternoon, my thoughts aren't as fresh. Typically, like I said, for me, my time is 10 o'clock. My place is right here, typically. I can do it other places, but I know if I come up right here, it's for that reason. So, well, this has been fun, and it's been good and being around here. And so June 22nd at 6:15 we'll start. Doors will be open at 6, so if you want to plan on 6, get something to eat. We'll usually have snacks. And at 6:15 we'll start with questions and dialogue. And so hope to see you then. And again, this is just a short remake of what we covered, and hopefully it's been helpful. Thank you, and